Hi everyone, and welcome to It's Never Too Late to Start, the fitness podcast with myself, Ben Broadhead, where we'll be talking about everything from fitness to care, health, well-being more generally. To give you some background on me as the host, my name's Ben Broadhead. I'm a personal trainer specialising in working with seniors and have been for the past several years now, both in care settings, in retirement living developments, and also privately with clients on a one-to-one basis. I now work along a lovely team of C-State exercise instructors, including Josh, who'll be joining us today. I thought, as it's the first episode, I'd give some background on the title, It's Never Too Late to Start. Obviously a known saying that I've taken for my own, but I thought it encompassed my message quite well, being that we can take stock and control of our health and well-being regardless of our age or any other fact that we may deem to be limiting. And so I hope I can convey that message through these episodes where I'll be talking to people like Josh, colleagues of mine, as well as clients, other health professionals, and those from the care industry too. So Josh, thank you so much for coming on to the first episode. I appreciate your company. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Ben. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the first ever Ben Broadhead podcast. So I look forward to having a chat with you today about the great things that we do.
Well, I'm glad you're happy to be here.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce yourself more generally, outside of work, just about you and who you are overall, and how we know each other too.
Of course, yeah. So my name's Josh. I'm 21 years old. Ben and I actually went to school together. We went to Clares Court in Maidenhead. We actually met we became close because we rowed together, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously rowing taught me a lot about fitness as well as other sports such as rugby and football. So that was sort of my introduction to the fitness side of things and getting me physically active. And from there, I taught myself about nutrition and different types of exercise. And now I do seated exercise courses.
Yeah. So we've got a similar sort of fitness background in a way.
Exactly.
Both did rowing, which is quite physically demanding.
Exactly, yeah.
And it gives you a good sort of knowledge of fitness in a holistic way because there's elements of strength and cardio and flexibility, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And we did all of those on a weekly basis. So I think that set us up quite nicely.
I think it did.
Yeah. So I took on Billy, who's another friend of ours, as a subcontractor to do seated exercise classes with myself at the start of the year. And then and after that, I put something out on Instagram and said, I'm open to taking on someone else if they want to join the team, the family. Yeah. And you responded to that, and you said, and you said you'd like to give it a go. So you've now been going for a couple of months now?
A couple of months.
Seated exercise classes?
Yeah. Started in was it the start of March? I had some trial sessions, and I've been having a great time.
Yeah.
So thank you for.
Yeah, of course.
And it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've been fantastic. All the feedback that I've got from the homes has been really positive. They say you're very lovely and sort of outgoing, and you actually seem to get a lot of engagement from particularly some of the residents have dementia and Alzheimer's who don't respond well or need a lot of outside stimulus. They seem to be sort of engaging with you because obviously you're quite outgoing and extroverted, so that's really positive to hear. So what's your experience been of that work over the last couple of months? How have you found it?
No, I really enjoy it. It's really lovely to be able to do something where you are helping a lot of people, and everyone's very friendly, everyone's very welcoming, not only the residents but the staff at the homes as well. So yeah, no, it's really it's a real pleasure to do.
I mean, I've obviously been working in care settings for several years now, so it's quite interesting to hear your perspectives as someone who's started more recently, how you've been finding it. So you mentioned about your fitness background. You're obviously sporty. You do rugby, gym. You've done rowing. Do you feel like that's experience that you're able to draw from in the seated exercise? Obviously, it's quite separate. Most people would categorize it quite separately, but would you say that there's some crossover, or there's areas that where the two relate, or where you can draw from that experience and knowledge and apply it?
I mean, all the stuff that I've learnt over the past 10 years from the sport that I've been doing, I'm able to implement that sort of stuff into the seated exercise. You know, you're able to do simplified versions of exercises and movements that I've learned in these classes that we give. So yeah, all of this stuff is connected really in the fitness industry. It doesn't really matter if you're a huge bodybuilder or someone just looking to get more mobile and more physical. You can do everything.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, at the end of the day, the body still moves in the same way, and so the movement patterns are always going to be the same. You may adapt them in terms of using less resistance, or you might do them seated to give yourself more stability. But actually, the movements are the same, and the exercises that I do in the gym are identical to those that I do in my seated exercise classes. I think sometimes people feel kind of demoralised by the fact that they're doing seated exercise as opposed to, I guess, conventional, more general exercise. But I was thinking about that the other day, and then I kind of made the observation that actually a lot of sport and a lot of exercise is seated. You've just spoken about
exactly.
rowing.
If you think about it, the majority,
same with cycling as well, you're obviously sat down.
Exactly. The majority of the exercises that you and I both do in the gym are seated anyway. The difference is just maybe the amount of reps that you're doing or the weight range. That's the only difference, but the actual exercise is the same.
I mean, bench press, you're lying down. I mean, you're almost snoring at that point.
Exactly.
So there's absolutely no shame in doing seated exercises as opposed to standing ones. It's perfectly valid, essentially. Yeah, so me personally, I've found that my most valuable knowledge and sort of my greatest asset, I'd say, my work, is my background in strength training particularly, which has always been my sort of main interest. I think probably because I don't enjoy the outdoors so much. My brother and my dad obviously go out cycling and things. I'd rather go somewhere with air conditioning. But the strength training is something that I'm really able to directly apply to the seated exercise. And I also think that it's of great benefit in terms of managing arthritis, providing strength around the joints, in terms of obviously offsetting sarcopenia, which is the kind of muscle atrophy that occurs with age. And I think as a consequence that has a knock-on effect with bone density as well. So it seems to have a positive influence on almost all of the sort of areas of general physical decline that all of us kind of come up against at some point in our lives. And I always feel like I'm at a great advantage having come into seated exercise via fitness and personal training as opposed to coming into it from a care background, because those are really the two routes. You're either a carer that gets into fitness and does seated exercise, or you're a fitness professional that enters into the care world. And I always feel like I'm at an advantage having come from a fitness background and understanding biomechanics and how the body moves and how the muscles work. You're in the same
I completely
boat.
agree. It's important to know these things as we are, giving these classes. So we want to be making sure we're doing everything to the best of our ability, making sure residents are happy and actually benefiting from these classes that we're giving. So that's very true.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the main priorities, there's three main priorities really, which are that it's fun, that it's safe, but the last one is that it's effective. And having like a deeper understanding of fitness allows you to make the sessions and the movements more as effective as they can be, with nuanced teaching points. Of course, some groups can't take on too much information. You don't want to overload people with information, but you can explain to people things like, for example, keeping your elbows locked in place on a bicep curl, where you're going to get a much better contraction of the bicep, and you're going to benefit from that exercise a lot more.
Of course,
someone that has come from a care background might not really know that.
No, that's a very good point you said about being effective, and that's something that I try to focus on when I do my weekly sessions. I'd like to make sure that the residents feel that they are progressing to a goal or a target, whether that be feeling more stable in their walking or just getting overall stronger in their bodies. I think it's important to, in a safe environment, get better and stronger each week. Because like you said, that's effective.
I absolutely agree. I think in seated exercise, there's often, and rightly so, a great emphasis on the social aspect of it. Just sort of general kind of stimulation, and there's a lot of emphasis on the social aspect and being able to stimulate the residents and get them involved in something and ensure they're having fun. But actually, there's no reason why they can't also, in addition to that, improve physically in the same way that we do at the gym. I think there's a perception that beyond a certain age, you can't make meaningful, tangible improvements to your strength and your physical fitness. But my clients have proved that theory entirely wrong, because I log their lifts and things, and I see them progress over time. Let me ask you next, what do you feel like you've learned from this new line of work? Just sort of in general, what are some of the main sort of insights and findings?
What have I learnt? Well, firstly, I think I've definitely gained a lot of confidence in giving these classes, because I think at first I was actually a bit nervous to start, because sometimes I was giving classes to sort of 19, 20, 21 residents, and for some people that could be quite daunting. But yeah, I've learned how to deliver these classes quite well, I think. I've definitely learnt sort of how to go at the right pace with these residents. So, you know, I work with a lot of different groups and a lot of different groups that have different abilities. So I have to adapt my sessions. I've learned how to do that. I've learned a lot about the fitness community of the elderly age range.
So confidence and sort of working with different groups and being able to kind of accommodate for different needs.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like you say, teaching a group of 19 or 20 people is a hell of a lot to take on, and it can be really daunting, because you're, you know, they sit there and they've got this sort of attitude of, right, impress me, entertain me.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. And so that can be really tough, and especially with different ability levels as well, having to cater to that. So you're having to work the room and deal with people on a one-to-one basis and keep everyone going simultaneously, where different people in the group might be doing different variations of an exercise. So yeah, I can completely empathize with that. I certainly at the start felt a little bit of the old imposter syndrome. I felt a bit out of place and nervous, and then over time I've sort of come into my own. So I'd say I've also benefited in that way of improved confidence and having that actually translate into my life more generally, feeling more sort of self-assured and confident in myself, which is a really great benefit. So before you'd started doing seated exercise, did you have a lot of interaction in your day-to-day life with seniors?
I have some lovely grandparents that I see very regularly. I'm very fortunate enough to see them once or twice a week. But apart from that, no. So it was, it was interesting and insightful to go to these classes. But I think now I'm at a level where I can confidently deliver these classes to any sort of ability. Because, like, you know, I go to some places where they're quite able, whereas other times I'm at care homes where they may need some more assistance with some of the exercises and maybe some of the I might have to describe some of the movements a bit more, which is absolutely fine. So yeah, it's been very insightful and it's great.
How do you think you've benefited from spending more time with seniors and engaging with them and conversating with them as a sort of younger chap?
I think it's made me actually very grateful to be. I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but like I'm very grateful to have my youth
Yeah.
and to have my strength, and it's made me a lot happier actually. And every time I come away from a class that's been successful, which is the majority of them, it gives me great deals of happiness because I know that I'm helping people, and they all seem to gain a lot from it.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but mentally as well. I mean, I do in a lot of my sessions, I implement a lot of breath work. Because I think that it's important to look after our mental clarity as well.
Yeah.
So at the end of most sessions, I do a few minutes of light breath work. We focus on our breathing, and it's really great stuff. Everyone chills out, and it's really good.
Yeah, I've implemented that a few times, not as much as I really ought to, but certainly psychologically that's quite beneficial, and they always seem to be quite sort of refreshed afterwards, and it leaves everyone in quite a nice headspace. And in addition to that, doing the breath work also improves our respiratory function as well. So it's good for our physical health also. But that point you make about feeling more grateful for your youth is also a really interesting one. It's certainly something that we often take for granted, but having that reference point makes us realise that actually it's something valuable and something it's fleeting and it's something that doesn't last forever. So I've found mixing with seniors really, really deeply beneficial, and it's something I'm grateful for because I've observed in the modern Western world, it's something that's not as prevalent as it maybe ought to be, or as prevalent as it is in other cultures as well, which I think is a little bit of a shame because we both know firsthand how beneficial that can be to engage with different generations, as opposed to us sort of being segregated into our age categories. And I read recently a piece that Home Instead put out relating to ageism, and I kind of I started to piece together that, well, maybe those two are related in the sense that we're intuitively suspicious of and sort of unfavourable towards groups that we don't have much exposure to. And so if we did mix more intergenerationally, then maybe that wouldn't be such an issue. What do you reckon?
No, I completely agree. Because I've only had positive experiences from the classes that I've given. So, I would agree.
Yeah, I think ageism is an interesting one because it's an area of discrimination or prejudice that we don't really talk about an awful lot. But it is quite relevant, and it goes both ways as well. I was on a date the other day with a girl who was saying that she sort of doesn't enjoy mixing with seniors, basically. And I asked her, do you get much exposure to older adults? Are your grandparents around? And it turned out that basically all her grandparents had passed, or most of them at least. And so she didn't have much intergenerational socialization in her day-to-day life. And I thought that might account for her perspective there. Whereas I had a very different perspective as someone who mixes with seniors on a daily basis. But it goes the other way too, and certainly I think it's more common that ageism is expressed from younger people towards older adults, and it's something I'm trying to be a little bit more aware of as someone that works with them each day. Have you sort of witnessed or had any experience of ageism in your work?
I have not actually, no.
Well, that's really positive to hear.
Yeah, no, everyone's been very welcoming, and they seem to, all the lovely residents have an interest in my life outside of the classes that I give, and that's the same with me as well. We have nice chats beforehand and after, so I think I'm quite lucky in that I haven't experienced any ageism. No.
Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly haven't experienced it, targeted towards me, besides the fact that lots of my clients disapprove of my beard.
Do they?
Yeah. Well, it's just a different perspective, and beards are much more common nowadays. there was kind of a perception, in the past that, people ought to be clean shaven and it was deemed more sort of professional.
Yeah.
But it's not so much anymore. But no, they banter with me and and it's a bit of fun. But when I ask that, I really mean, have you seen ageism towards the residents or other people?
I haven't, no.
No, well, that's really good, and I think all the homes that we work with are really fab. But I was thinking about ageism on the way here, and I realised that there's really two distinct sides of it. So one is kind of the more obvious, which is like neglect or kind of impatience or unkindness towards seniors. But the other side is something that most of us are probably more likely guilty of, which is kind of pandering to them excessively to the point that they actually feel slightly patronised. And I think that's something that we can all be a little bit more aware of. To give a sort of a little case study for that, I was picking up one of my clients recently to take her to my group class, and she was saying that she'd just gone to get her booster jab for COVID. And she said that that the lady there was speaking really slowly to her, and kind of like making her sentences really kind of simplistic and so on. And she said to me, I don't know why she was talking to me like I was an idiot. You know?
Yeah.
And I completely can empathise with that and understand why that can be so difficult, because it feels undignified, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you kind of toe that line? Or do you kind of have to adapt your sessions for different groups to accommodate for that?
I think it's obviously quite clear when you do need to adapt your sessions. And so if I do feel that I need to explain an exercise a bit more or visually do a visual representation of an exercise a tad more than I usually would, then I will do that. And I will do that in a way where I am trying not to be patronising, because it's very important to keep that two-way line of respect going. You want them to respect you, and you want to respect them as well, and not feel that you're, patronising them. That's
I mean, but on the dementia floors and in certain homes, doing lots of sort of games and songs and things that are very kind of interactive will actually be received really well. But then if you kind of did a similar style of session in one of the independent living developments or retirement villages, come across
as being very,
they'd feel as if you're talking down to them. So because you're actually working quite a wide variety of locations. You're working at day centres, care homes, and independent living. So are you kind of providing different styles of sessions in those different settings?
Yeah, definitely. So for some of the places that I go to where they might be slightly less able, we'll do a really wide variety of exercises. We'll do a lovely warm-up, we'll do some strength stuff, and then we'll also do some stuff with some foam balls. But we'll do loads of stuff to keep sort of the momentum going. And most of those exercises will be a simplified version or an easier version of something that I usually do. Now, when I'm going to somewhere that has residents of which will be able to do more capable exercises, then I'll obviously ramp up the strength or the reps, and we'll do sort of a much more straightforward session, if you like, that's not as comprehensive with loads of different things. We'll sort of get the job done, if that makes sense, and in still a fun, enjoyable way. I play music in all the sessions that I do, and we have a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds brilliant. It sounds like you're able to kind of read the room and adapt the sessions accordingly, which is really positive. So working with the groups where there is higher rates of dementia. I mean, some homes specialise in working with dementia, or you might work on a dementia floor. So you potentially work in groups where everyone has dementia. How have you found that, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, there has been some points where it's been a bit challenging. But like you said, you've just got to adapt to that, and fortunately there will be other staff there that can give you a
like
hand.
activities coordinators.
Yeah, of course. But the main thing is you've just got to try and be as clear as possible with these groups that have high rates of dementia. So stuff like, showing them visually what you want them to be doing, just reminding them every now and again, keeping the morale there, just encouragement is great. The music is going, so that's keeping a positive atmosphere. And just trying to get even the slightest bits of response is still great. Like even a small bit of movement is still going to benefit them. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's not just physically, but like mentally as well. These sessions can boost, I think, their mental well-being as well.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, absolutely. And when you say you've come up against sort of challenges, what kind of challenges have you had? Are you having sort of disruptive behaviour? Are people kind of shouting out?
Yeah, that it's very rare, but sometimes that can happen. Which is obviously is fine, is to be expected. You've just got to be sort of really on the spot and prepared to deal with it in the best way that you can, which is fine. Yeah,
I mean, sort of with dementia, the behaviour can be really unpredictable. I mean, I speak to Billy. Billy is one of our other colleagues who works with us. So he was saying there's one lady that would like slap him on the bum and like say sort of inappropriate things to him or call out whilst he's trying to teach, which I can imagine is really difficult. I've never really had to deal with anything to that sort of extent, but I certainly have people that are, you know, I suppose delusional essentially, and they'll talk about things that I know aren't true, or they'll say, oh, so and so is coming over in a minute, or I'm going out on holiday today. But I've always sort of felt that really you need to kind of live in their world and kind of go along with it to keep them happy essentially. So I got one client that will say, oh, you know, I'm off to see Elvis today, and I'll say, well, I hope you have a really pleasant time.
Yeah. You've got to you know, keep it positive, and because like stuff like that is not necessarily just disruptive.
That's true.
You can keep a class going.
Absolutely. But in fact, it can make it more fun. Sometimes I'm even thankful for the people in the class that are a little bit more kind of outgoing or kind of you know, speaking out a little bit more, because they're actually filling the verbal void. And when you've got a group that are all staring at you blankly, those are the most intimidating groups. I think.
Very true. Yeah.
You switch the TV off and they all sigh at you.
Yeah.
So sometimes someone that's being a bit silly or whatever else, actually it could be quite refreshing and make the session more fun. Right, on that note, Josh, do you have any sort of plans for the future? What going forwards in exercise and in general?
Just, I think, keeping consistent.
It's
very important. Just not getting too try not to get too stressed out by it. I used to be very on it with my fitness and think that everything had to be perfect, but what's more important than precision is consistency, I think. With anything, not just fitness. So
that's very true.
Yeah, week in, week out, just getting it done, and
that's absolutely right.
Enjoying it as well. Trying to enjoy it, adapting it. Change is good. Just like my classes, I try to change the stuff we do every week to keep it fresh, and that's something that I can do as well. Changing the exercises that I do, keeping stuff interesting.
Yeah. Well, actually, those two concepts, enjoyment and consistency, are directly correlated, as far as I can tell. So I've always said that enjoyment of exercise is a precursor to sustainability. It's when we try to stretch ourselves too far that it can become a chore, and we end up not being able to keep it up for very long. So I always encourage people, actually find a mode of exercise that you really enjoy, even if it's not necessarily optimal, or, you know, even if it's just walking or whatever else. As long as you can keep it up, that's the main thing. Because, ultimately, how consistent you are for your exercise is going to have the biggest influence on your long-term health.
And just talking about consistency, I've actually, in answer to your question of what I'm going to do in the future with my fitness. I've started running
Yeah,
a lot recently, and I am going to join a run club in Windsor. Mm-hmm. Some good friends of mine have started this great run club, so I'm gonna go join that, and that's a similar thing to we're doing. It's important to have a community to do these sorts of things with. So it's great that we can do these classes as a community, and that boosts the morale and keeps it positive.
Oh yeah, definitely. Certainly having a social aspect can help with the adherence of any kind of exercise program or endeavour, without a doubt. Well, that sounds really positive, and I know lots of chaps our age focus on strength exercise at the detriment of all other components of fitness, and I'm certainly guilty of that. So to hear that you're getting into running and improving your cardiovascular health is really positive. Do you have any closing points, Josh, for us? And if you don't, that's fine.
Thank you for having me, first of all. I hope everyone that's listening is looking forward, has enjoyed this podcast and has enjoyed this podcast and is looking forward to the next one. There we go, get my words out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure who I'm going to have on next, but hopefully someone a little bit different. Maybe a client, actually, just to talk about their personal experience of getting into exercise. I'm particularly interested in people who have started exercise later on in life and how they found that. And that obviously relates nicely to our title, It's Never Too Late to Start.
There you go.
Wow. Okay, thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on, Josh. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And all the best. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.